Hi, and welcome to the Multi-Location Google Maps Bootcamp. I'm Chaz Edward, joined today by Nate Fisher. We're with Local Brand Manager, your Google business management software. We're going to be talking about the 10 things you really need to know when it comes to multiple location Google Maps, between ranking, setting up your listings, manage your listings. So this Webby, you want to stay tuned throughout it. We're going to be actionable if you manage multiple listings, if your company manages multiple listings, if you're an agency that works with franchises, you want to stay tuned. We also have a special offer that we'll talk to you about, but this is not a pitch. There's no sales pitch, pure value of local SEO strategy specifically geared for multiple location businesses and helping you win as a franchise or chain when you're scaling upwards. So Nate, thanks for joining us today. This looks like a great Webby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be going through a multi-location Google Maps, Google Business Profile training/bootcamp. I am Nate Fisher, partner and CTO at Local Brand Manager. A little bit of background on myself. I am the co-founder of a couple of other local MarTech software platforms. Two others would be Local Viking and Rep.co. I have about 18 years in the industry, started off with affiliate marketing, and have pretty much done everything in between local SEO to enterprise and technical SEO. I am also an agency owner myself, and I work with businesses of all sizes, from multi-billion-dollar enterprise corporations all the way down to small mom and pop shops. So I have seen a number of different problems pretty much day after day and worked full-time solving them with software. Today, we're going to have about a 45-minute to an hour-long training. Next, you're going to get an introduction from my partner, Chaz Edward, and then we're going to dive right into today's training. Thanks for viewing, and see you soon.
I'm Chaz Edward. I'm a partner at Local Brand Manager, founder of Web20 Ranker. I'm a coach at Local Client Takeover, lots of free courses there. And I've built, scaled, and sold seven-figure client agencies, been doing local SEO since 2010. So we have a lot to share today, busy agenda for this Webby, so I'm going to dive right into it. So when you're dealing with multiple location businesses, one of the biggest things you should consider is how are you going to access the listings themselves? And if you've done local SEO for any period of time, you know the simple fact of having to log into your GMB listing or your Google Business Profile listing comes with some risk, right? Managing multiple listings comes with even more. Your account is literally associated with the computer you log in with the emails. Everything's associated. Google tracks all that. Not only that, there's passwords to remember. So, and then if you manage lots of listings under one account, well, the problem with that, what happens is if one listing gets flagged, there's the potential that other listings are also affected by that. So you really want to try to avoid managing a lot of listings with one single manager or owner account. There's a lot of risk associated with that. If a competitor comes across and starts flagging your brand's listings, and any of those get considered spam, again, you could even risk getting the entire manager account. And you don't want to be in that situation. So the safest way to manage multiple Google Business Profiles is an individual manager account for each and every listing. And when you think about that, well, what if I have a franchise with 100 locations? Does that mean I need 100 Google accounts to manage those 100 locations? Ideally, yes. To manage them in the safest possible manner, yes. That's how you would do it. If you put them all in one account and enough of them get flagged, you run the risk of losing the entire account. It can happen. There's a history of it happening. But what if you do have 100 locations and you have 100 accounts managing 100 locations? Are you going to be able to log into all 100 of those consistently, easily? That becomes a nightmare. That's where our software helps you. consolidate all those. One time you owe off the account, you don't ever have to log in again. You manage it through the software. You can do GMB posts, photos, Q&As, respond to reviews. You can do rank tracking, geogrids, competitor analysis with that one authorization. You don't have to log into hundreds and hundreds of accounts. Authorize your account with Local Brand Manager, and we make it an easy portal to manage in bulk, right? So that convenience is huge if you manage lots of listings, and that safety that you can bring to your brand or your client that you're working with is huge as well. And then finally, as a pro tip, use branded emails that you turn into Google accounts when you're managing the listing, right? So if you have 100 locations, it doesn't mean run out and set up 100 Gmail accounts. You're probably going to lose some of those, and then you run into really big issues. Instead, you can use a branded email on something like localbrandmanager.com. So you would have, listing 1 at localbrandmanager.com, listing 2 at localbrandmanager.com. You would do that for the brand, and then those email accounts, there's an easy way to turn those into a Google account that can then manage a listing. So it's very easy to create a branded email, turn into individual Google accounts, manage your listings that way. I have a video in my course, free course by the way, Local SEO Course 2.0 at localclienttakeover.com, if you want to learn how to turn those into branded emails, or how to turn those branded emails into Google accounts. Check it out. And we'll make this slide deck available after the Webby as well. If you want to download it, there's a lot of links, a lot of resources in this. So please download that as well. Coming up, the next thing, Nate's going to talk about data consistency and hygiene across multiple listings. So I'm going to pass it over to Nate and let him pick it up from there.
One thing that we consistently see across campaigns, whether it's from large multinational firms with hundreds or sometimes even thousands of locations, all the way down to companies with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 locations, is an issue with keeping their GBP data consistent and hygienic. Now, many multi-location brands suffer from this issue, and if you've been in GBP or GMB for long enough, you've probably seen Google push updates to your dashboard or to your listing that weren't quite correct. There are 2 ways that updates can happen to your GBP listing. The first is through algorithmic updates, and that means that Google has decided with their AI that your attributes are inaccurate or maybe not as quite accurate as they can be, and they programmatically update those to what they think is correct. Now, this data that they're using comes from their knowledge graph, and that consists of the citations that you have for your company on the web, the information that's on your website, things that are on your social media platforms, and pretty much anywhere that Google can crawl data about your business. Now, these updates can be very difficult to reverse once the Google AI has decided on what is correct. The other type of updates that you may be seeing are user-suggested updates. Now, those can come from users that mean well, but maybe they just added inaccurate information to your listing. Or that can also come from an attack, wherein unscrupulous people will have farms of Google Guide accounts and other Gmails, and they will purposefully push wrong data into your listing, oftentimes overruling what is correct. Now, in the past, we used to see this happening for your GBP title and the address quite frequently. These days, we mostly see updates across a little bit less important data attributes such as your services, although we do still see sometimes phone numbers being changed and things that can really cause your brand to lose money. Sometimes if a user searches for a location and they see inaccurate data about what products or service you offer, that can be an issue. Another thing we see in the healthcare space quite frequently is incorrect data being pushed for appointment scheduling links, as well as sometimes COVID-19 information. So you might be asking what you can do about this issue. The number one thing to start with is ensuring that your data is consistent across the web. Keep an inventory of all of your citations and places that your business information is listed, and make sure that you are frequently updating that and keeping it as up to date as possible. Now, the next thing that you need to do is either through a platform like Local Brand Manager or potentially through the GBP dashboard, you need to be able to get alerts when these attributes change and get in there and quickly update them. So the GBP dashboard will send probably about 80 to 90% coverage in terms of updates via email. You'll get an email that says, hey, this location has an attribute change. Do you accept it? Sometimes they'll just push the attribute change live and you'll have to notice it after the fact. Local Brand Manager actually allows you to get 100% coverage on attribute changes, and you can get those notifications via SMS as well as email. So the next thing, once you do see an attribute change, you have to change it back. That can happen via a platform that uses the GBP APIs, like Local Brand Manager, or you can also use the GBP dashboard using the CSV upload. Now, one thing to note is that in the past, we had a feature that programmatically reverted these changes for you and allowed you to lock your attributes in place. Unfortunately, that is against the GBP terms of service, and Google actually reached out to us and let us know that we had to remove that feature. So unfortunately, really all you can do is stay vigilant in keeping your data consistent. Make it a daily habit to scroll through a platform like Local Brand Manager where you can see all of your stats and your attributes at a glance, and have it as part of your kind of a ritual going through and keeping your data consistent.
Okay, looks like it's back on me. So far we talked about managing multiple listings safely, right? And the dangers of using one account to manage lots of listings. Data consistency and the importance of that, and some tips on that. This next one for multi-locations is specifically for service area businesses. There's a big misconception for service area businesses that you can only have one listing for your business, and that's not technically true. In actuality, yes, you can have multiple SAB listings under specific circumstances, but you don't want to mix multiple listings, SAB listings with visible address listings. So what does that mean? I'm including a link to Google's own terms of service that highlights this specifically. Specifically what they say is if you have different locations for your service business with separate service areas and separate staff at each location, you're allowed one profile for each location. So as long as you have separate staff for your different service areas, you can have multiple listings. For that, you would have to, it's on you to show that separation. So some ways that you could do that is prepare a file that shows maybe that you have multiple company vehicles registered. And that would be easy to show different service areas. You say, well, here's my one truck that services this area. Here's my truck and crew for this area. And you would show the registered vehicles in the company name. That's proof that you could send to Google. Other ways, city or county licenses for key staff or managers of the various service area locations, right? That's a way to do it if your business requires some type of licensing. See if that works for you. Different industries, it might be the way to go. If it is, yes, it's an affordable way to get multiple listings. Get business license for each location. And then consider separate utility bills or bank statements for the various locations. Sometimes if you have like a manager of another region, they might use a different bank. So you might have a bank statement from a bank in that region versus another region. You could use stuff like that. So think about your business specifically. What are some of the supporting evidence that you could give Google that you have separate service areas with separate staff that service each location? So you show those separations, and then you can have multiple service area listings. So that's good news for service area businesses. And to break that misconception, you can do it. Just prepare and have that information for Google support staff, because you're probably going to have to present it to them at some point. The next topic I'm going to talk about is going to be filtering, the danger of filtering when you have multiple locations, and some tips to deal with that. So if you're dealing with service area businesses or hybrid listings that you have service areas listed on, when you assign service areas to those listings, you try to avoid overlapping them at the zip code level. So if you have two listings that service Las Vegas, let's say, one listing you would ideally list, they service these 20 zip codes of Las Vegas, and then this other listing services these other zip codes of Las Vegas, and dictate it that way. So do not overlap those for multiple listings for the same brand. You don't overlap those service areas at the city or the zip code level. Try to avoid definitely avoid zip code level. City, it's okay as long as you're very distinct on the zip codes. I've had listings denied reinstatement because the zip codes overlapped with other listings. They said no, they have to be very distinct. When you do this, their terms of service are very clear. You have to have distinct service areas. And then it is common for listings to filter each other along the edge where the service areas or the radii meet, right? Multi-location listings tend to filter each other along those edges. It's common. The more clear separation that you can have, the less impact it has, but it does happen. So understanding that you can have multiple service area businesses, which is great news for a lot of businesses, and then understanding that there is filtering that occurs a lot of times along the edges, and then the danger of overlapping those service areas. It's against terms of service. It's also led to suspensions and denials of reinstatement when that happens, so avoid that. I believe Nate's going to follow up with me here on some posting for multi-location Google business profiles, so we'll look forward to what he has to say there, and I'll be back shortly with the next section. So hope you're enjoying this multi-location bootcamp webinar. I'm Chaz. If you have any questions, make sure you ask us in live chat.
Another major topic that we hear about quite often is GBP posting across multiple locations. So the first thing I want to say is that there are no issues with reposting GBP posts with duplicate content across your GBP listings. Duplicate content is a bit of a contentious topic in SEO, especially local SEO, and a lot of people say that there are no such thing as a duplicate content penalty when it relates to your website. Other people say that there are. Now, personally, I like to get a little bit of unique content across things like location pages when it comes to my website. However, when it comes to our GBP, do not be afraid to post the same post across any number of your locations. Now, in terms of the strategy, using your GBP post should be similar to how you deal with your social media. Now, you should be sharing updates about your products and your services, as well as sometimes information about your local city. So ideally, you should be posting about 3 to 4 times per week. Now, I know that that can be difficult, especially depending on what niche you are in, but you definitely want to avoid posting multiple times per day, as we have seen potential keyword filtering issues from this. Another thing that people often ask is, does GBP posting help my rankings? Now, this is something that our tests show periodically not much of a change, but we definitely see ranking increases throughout the year from GBP posts. So you should be mixing up your posts, targeting different keywords, targeting different topics within your niche, and it should be something that you're consistently doing. You're showing Google and the algorithm, and as well as your customers, that you are active, you are there if they do contact your business online, and you are going to provide Google's customers or users a good experience at your business. Now, Local Brand Manager is a perfect tool for multi-location posting. I'm going to hop over to the dashboard here, and we have two different types of ways for you to post GBP posts to multiple locations. The first way is this interface here, where you will select the GBP post type. You can come in here, you can add a call to action, and then you can type in your post or you can paste in your post depending on if you have that content elsewhere. Now, we also support spin tags. We have a help document that can walk you through that. Don't use spin tags in a spammy manner. I do see some brands that just like to get a little bit of variation between posts, so you can add synonyms and add spin tags and have different synonyms across different GBP posts. You also have the ability to post GBP specific information using our GBP variable syntax, and we do have a help doc that goes over that. But essentially what you'll do is you'll come in here and you will put your post in. You can select an image, and then you can either select multiple locations, or you can use our tagging system and you can tag your locations with a similar tag or the same tag, and then you can select that tag. Then you can choose whether or not you want to have this post go live right now, or you can also schedule it in the future using our scheduling functionality. Now, the other thing you can do is choose to have your post recur or not. Now, sometimes throughout the year, Google has made it so that posts would roll off your GBP. Most niches now, posts are sticking up for quite a while, if not forever. So one thing to be on the lookout for is making sure that you don't have a bunch of duplicate posts on your listing. So again, we support scheduling as well as recurring posts. The other way to post through the platform is using our CSV bulk upload option. A lot of agencies and multi-location companies do prefer to use that. It is essentially just a CSV template that we'll give you. You can then fill that template out and you can upload posts all the way from today, every day into the next year, or as long as you want. We will oftentimes see agencies uploading CSVs that have hundreds of posts scheduled out in the future, or maybe a quarter at a time. So again, keeping your location up to date with frequent posts, communicating to your customers about changes in your product or your service offerings, giving them kind of a consistent drumbeat of content is going to help your listing rank better as well as get better engagement online. Now, it's certainly not a silver bullet. It is one of many things that you should be doing in a holistic GBP campaign.
Okay, now that we have this primer on Google Business Profile posting, this next topic's one of my favorite. I've written extensively about location pages for multiple location SEO. It's really one of the tactics that can set you apart from competitors that don't do this, right? It can, even if you don't have multiple GMB listings, you still should probably, if you're a local business, you should be using location pages. It's going to expand your client's visibility tremendously. Obviously, if you're multi-location, you should probably have lots of GMB listings. You want to use location pages most of the time. 99.9% of the time, you're going to want to use location pages. So I'm going to talk to you about location pages, some how to use them, some best practices for them, and then also going to share a checklist that you can use when you're optimizing them that's gotten me tremendous results from the on-page optimization of these location pages. So first, yes, you probably should be using dedicated location pages on the website for each of your listings, right? And they should probably have optimized page URLs. At the minimum, it should have city and state or city and state abbreviation. Lots of times you would want to add some type of service keyword to that URL then, depending on what your root URL is going to be and what competitor parity looks like. So I don't want to get into like exactly how to write your location page URLs, but they should probably be optimized, and they should be not cannibalized by other URLs on your site either. So if you use your home page, there are cases where you might use the home page if you have multiple locations. Use it for like your headquarters or the most competitive market. An example of this would be if you have a home page is optimized for Atlanta, and then there's several inner location pages for like Gainesville, Athens, and Marietta, right? That makes sense. If you're like a small regional chain, you could do something like that. Generally, the homepage is going to be branded and not optimized for a location. So on those rare occasions, in my example, like the Atlanta example, you might do that. Another example you might do is if you only have locations that serve one city. Like if you have 4 locations in Las Vegas. I had a client like that before. They had multiple locations in Las Vegas. They might actually had 5 or 6. We use the homepage to link their GMB listings to, but we did have floating neighborhood pages and other pages about zip codes and other geo pages as well. But in that case, you might be able to get away with it. Another case you might be able to get away with, but you might still want to have borough pages. So there's some outliers, but most of the time, the homepage is going to be for the brand. It's not going to be optimized for the location. You might have a regional chain optimize it for the region, or USA for a national chain, but you're usually going to use location pages for that. And we're going to actually look at some examples then of location pages. So let's look at an example of a good multi-location website and then a good location page. So I put some links here. I mentioned 3 sites. They're big national franchises: Roto-Rooter, Pop-A-Lock, HR Block. If you work in multi-location SEO, review what those sites do in terms of structure, location pages. They're good examples. You typically won't go wrong if you're setting up a new multi-location site to refer to those sites. I'm going to show you Roto-Rooter, and then we'll look at the checklist for optimizing them. And then I do have a guide much bigger than what I can cover in this Webby on location pages for multiple locations. I published it on Web20 Ranker. The link's here, but it's on the Web20 Ranker blog. It's multi-location SEO strategy. It's very comprehensive. It's a very big post. It's very comprehensive. It's A to Z guide for multiple locations. Check that out. So let's look at Roto-Rooter, find out what they're doing, and just quick example of a multi-location site. So here's actually, let's go to their homepage. So here's Roto-Rooter. They do have some dynamic scripting going on here, but when you actually look at their locations, they have a really good location structure, multi-location structure of their website. You can see their location. Well, you can't see the URL structure right now, so actually let me shift my point of view for you, and now you should be able to see the URL structure here. You can see this is their locations page that lists and link out to a bunch of state pages, and we'll look at those. So they link out to state pages, and then the state pages link out to city pages of the site. So if you have a really big franchise with lots of locations and you're going to have state pages, this site's great. If you don't have state pages, just eliminate the state part of it and look at how they do their city pages, or how they structure something like this, right? And then from here, you can look into actually location pages, but this is a really good structure. So here is one of their location pages itself. You can see obviously some strong call to actions up top. Local phone number. They have a city optimized URL, right? They have a local phone numbers. They have local elements going on here. And if you click on this, there's actually some scripting in here that has, again, it's this all kind of like, if you look at their links and all their local elements that they're doing, again, they're getting these local elements in. They're linking to itself. Think about that. This page is linking to itself. It's in my checklist. Look how they put their services, right? They link to their service. They list their services on their location pages. So many multi-location sites get this wrong, and they don't list and link to their services on every single location page. Every location page, you have to tell Google which services that location offers. Link out to them, link into those service pages, and then link the service pages back, right? Tell Google what the hours are for every single one of your locations, right? Tell them about every single one of your locations, USPs that are local, right? You have local sections, right? You can see a really good local section. And then guess what? Yes, you should add this. You should mention the neighborhoods that the city or that listing services, or the neighborhoods that are inside, in around Birmingham, neighborhoods and communities in around the city you're targeting. This is ideal how you do this, right? Again, bullet point, more services. They have a video. You have your NAP. This is a really great location page. This is ideal. They rank tremendously well across the United States in probably dozens to hundreds of markets. This site rocks when it comes to multi-location SEO. Do what they do. They link to their services. They mention their services. They write about they talk about the location. They have local elements in here. They have FAQs. They link to their reviews. All this, they have their, they might not link to all of them, but they mention some of their members. This is just a great example of a multi-location website. Let's look at the checklist. That site, and again, you have access to this checklist. That site displays so many of these. When you do this, I've changed GeoGrids from red to green in about maps in about 10 days from just doing this, doing nothing else but doing this location page optimization checklist. Check it out. I don't have time in this webby probably go through all. I think there's like 32 points here. But understand what these are. You can absolutely go through these. This is how you get the best results for your location page. Let me know if you have any questions about using location pages. I'm going to pass it back to Nate. He's going to talk to you about using Local Brand Manager and our software to easily bulk publish images to your multiple listings and multiple scenarios on how to use our bulk image gallery that Local Brand Manager offers you. So I'm Chaz. Thanks for watching this section. Let me know if you have any questions about anything we covered so far in the Google Maps multi-location boot.
Another piece of the GBP campaign puzzle is publishing images across your listings. Now, Local Brand Manager provides a number of ways to publish images that we'll see here in a minute. But I first want to say that we do recommend unique photos for each listing as well as each location page, although there are times where you will publish the same image to a location. So the image gallery that you'll see in a minute has functionality for you to schedule images in a couple of different ways. Now, let's check out some of these example scenarios. The first one is sending one image to multiple locations using an instant publish. Now, you might do this because you have an update that you want to push out. I've seen companies push out very colorful images that announce some sort of holiday closure or an alteration to a product or service or to a schedule for these locations. Let's go ahead and quickly pop over to the dashboard and take a look. Now I'm going to go ahead and click under bulk posting and go to multi-location media. And I can come here and I can choose the category of a listing. One thing to note is that the GBP API is not very friendly, wherein if you select a category that doesn't exist for a location, the image will fail on upload. We do have this fallback option here, which means that if you do accidentally select a category that doesn't exist, we will fall back to the additional category that does for every location. You can then come in here, select your image, and then select either your location to location dropdown or a tag to get multiple locations. And then you can also schedule the upload, or you can choose not to and click submit, and that will immediately post this image to all of your locations. Now, scenario 2 is publishing to multiple locations via the drip system. Now, for that, we're going to take a look at the Local Brand Manager gallery. So you are going to click gallery here, and then you are going to select one or more images, and you are going to schedule those images to be posted. So we do have a bunch of training around our gallery feature. It is fairly complex. It allows you to basically do anything you want with images, and you can quickly upload them to as many locations as you want. It will automatically create a cadence where you can choose how many days you want this to schedule. So let's say I chose 14 images. I wanted to schedule one image per day. I would leave that as a 2-week or 14-day cycle. I could choose the start date, and then I could choose to only publish these images on business days. So that's Monday through Friday. We'll see EXIF data in a second here, but you can quickly see how adding these images in the gallery and using our scheduling functionality can allow you to quickly push images across one or more locations. Again, you're going to do the same thing with the category selection. Make sure that if you are pushing images across locations, that they do support the category that you select, or choose additional. And then you will go ahead and add locations here, and you can add locations one at a time, or you can add tags, which we will set manually outside of the gallery, and you can publish to as many locations as you want. Now, the other two scenarios are going to be sending multiple images to one location, and you can do that with either the gallery or the first interface that I showed you, as well as multiple images to multiple locations using the location select or the tagging system. Now, one thing that is a bit of a contentious topic, and certainly not a hill that I'm going to die on, is image optimization, especially EXIF data. I think most SEOs can agree on the fact that good basic 101 SEO involves optimizing image file names. Now, where a lot of SEOs disagree is whether or not stuffing EXIF data that is specialized metadata about keywords and about location, whether it's addresses or GPS coordinates, as well as brand names, whether or not that helps is kind of up to you. There are certainly agencies that only post photos that are updated with EXIF data. There are other agencies that don't use it at all. There are campaigns and tests that show positive results, and there are certainly others that don't. Another thing about multivariate testing is it is extremely difficult to do and nail down what is actually truly helping a campaign. So regardless of how you feel about EXIF data, the platform allows you to inject EXIF data and to keep your original EXIF data and basically do whatever you want with EXIF data. So as you can see, Local Brand Manager is the perfect tool for posting multiple images to one or more locations and making it really easy to run this part of your GBP campaign.
Okay, now that we talked about images and bulk image optimization, which is great, makes life a lot easier, right? We're going to talk about signals. This is something that we see all the time when I analyze listings for brands that have lots of locations. They tend not to do this. One main thing is create signals for every one of their listings. Every listing should be built as its own brand. Okay, that means every GBP listing should have its own set of citations, brand mentions, things like, your brand profiles like Facebook, Yelp, Twitter, YouTube, which we would consider like a brand foundation. You should also have Web 2.0s, unstructured citations. These tend to be very affordable to get outsourced. But anything that mentions NAP, every one of your locations should have a well-rounded citation, social, brand profile, online presence that's been built out. You should submit each one to data aggregators. Data Axle, which used to be Infogroup USA, Factual, like Foursquare. Make sure you're getting all of your listings submitted to those. It's important. It's important to establish entity for every single one of your GBP listings. Google wants to see this. A lot of times, especially if you have smaller, less competitive listings, just establishing this brand foundation and doing your location page, a lot of times that ranks you in the 3-pack for these lower comp markets. And if you're not doing it, you're going to be way behind if you're competing in very tough markets as well. So make sure you create signals for every single one of your listings when you deal with multi-location brands. Every listing can have a Facebook page. Every listing can have its own Twitter, its own YouTube account that's locally optimized for that listing city. Does that make sense? Always, whenever you're doing these, make sure you're getting complete NAP, name, address, phone number, and include the location page website link as well. This is actually some listings here that I'm sharing with you, some resources. You probably have your own list, but if not, these are what I usually have my team come through and build for USA listings. Would be all of these. Like, I make sure that my company, my listing is listed on all of these directory sites. These are citations. We also do a handful of GPS listings. We get them listed here. And then anything that we can't submit to, we try to do a bunch of alternates. But this does still work. You should still establish entity. And then also don't neglect building out your social fortress, your brand profile, your brand profiles, right? Your branded accounts on Pinterest, Tumblr, WordPress, YouTube. There's a whole list here you can go through. I'm giving you access to my whole list. There's a whole lot of them here that you can go and have your VA or assistant build out and mention name, address, phone number, website URL link consistently over and over and over again. Mention your services, mention the city and neighborhoods you service, and this stuff does still move the needle. Very important. If you have any questions, probably going to pass this back over to Nate, who's going to talk to you about identifying good performing and not so good performing campaigns at scale with the software. Managing listings at scale so much easier. So I'm going to pass it back over to Nate. Definitely, though, build out your brand signals for every single listing.
Another issue that we frequently deal with, whether it's for our multi-location clients or customers or just single locations as well, is identifying high and low performing locations as well as individual metrics within those locations. On top of that, another and a very important thing to track is a location's visibility. This can allow you to quickly see whether an algorithm change has hurt your listing or maybe helped your listing, and gives you a roadmap on when to react, and perhaps you need to do some investigation. So let's start with looking at the local brand manager GeoGrid system. Now, we have a ton of training on this, but from a high level, the GeoGrid is a new way to look at local rankings as visibility and some other influencing factors play a huge role. Imagine that each of these maps here on the right is a poll or a ranking request from each individual square on a grid across a geolocation. And what we do is we take a single keyword, in this case, it's a fast food restaurant, for a single location. In this case, it's a Burger King in Huntington Beach. And for each point on the grid, we actually pull up what the Google Maps listings and rankings look like, and then we plot that in a heat map, if you will. So at a glance, you can see that I pulled what is 5 Burger King locations in Orange County, and I ran the same query for each of those. I ran these live, but in Local Brand Manager, you can actually schedule these out so they'll auto run and they will allow you to track your rankings automatically. And what we can see is at a glance, we can take a look and see how any individual listing is doing. And this can tell us that maybe we need to dive into a listing and figure out whether the location page that it's linked to can be further optimized. Maybe a location needs some more citations to it or some backlinks. Another thing we can see is just at a glance, this location here in Irvine is actually ranking much better for the query fast food restaurant than any of the other locations. And this can allow our SEO team, or us as the SEO, to kind of dive in and see why that may be. Maybe the location has more reviews on its Google My Business listing. Maybe for your niche, a different third-party review platform is more important, and maybe the Yelp listing for this location has a bunch of positive reviews. Whatever it is, this is going to give you a starting point so you can actually go and dig into what may be either helping or hurting a location ranking when you're looking at a ton of locations. So I'll just click through here and you can see what the grid looks like. In this case, this is a location which looks to be up in Brea, North Orange County, and you can see that around the location, if somebody searches for a fast food restaurant, they show up sometimes within the top, let's say 7. But as you go away from that location, its visibility drops very quickly. Now, if I jump over to that Irvine location, you can see a much different story. And even though that location is in the center and the grid is the same across all of these, for some reason, this location is ranking much better. Now, I would, as an SEO, go ahead and dive in and maybe pull an Ahrefs report and look at the backlinks for this location. Maybe I would use Whitespark to look at the citations. Maybe I would do some analysis of the on-page or the social media review platforms connected to this location, and I would try to replicate whatever is going right for this location across maybe a location like this that doesn't have quite as good of visibility. So the other thing to think about when trying to identify high and low performers is looking at your location metrics. Local Brand Manager allows you to generate multi-location reports, and they look like this, and you can choose as many locations as you want, and you can quickly compare the metrics, whether it's the views in search, how many times somebody clicked on a CTA for your posts, how many times somebody clicked through to your website. Basically, any of the GBP or GMB metrics can be populated here, and you can quickly scan across your locations and determine what locations have things that are going good for them, what locations have things that are going bad for them, and choose to dive into the locations that are hurting and replicate the things that you've done for the locations that are doing well. So again, Local Brand Manager allows you to take a look at your multi-location health across all of your locations in a couple of different ways. And this is vital to creating SEO campaigns that are scalable and getting good results across all of your GBP locations.
Okay, we're doing this final module of the multi-location Google Maps Bootcamp. We're going to analyze 3 different enterprise models, and we're going to look at reasons why you might use each, and then there's some limitations to some of these as well. So the first one we're going to look at would be what I call like a national franchise model. It's used by companies like Roto-Rooter, Popalock. We're going to actually look at the Roto-Rooter site a little bit, but what they do is they use location pages on the corporate website, and then some local silo pages on the corporate website. And then the GBP listings are connected to those individual location pages on the corporate website. That's what we call the national franchise model. And if we actually look at some examples of this, so here's a Roto-Rooter GBP listing. And if we go to their actual location page, so this is actually their Harrisburg location page, and you can see that their location page has all those elements that we would think a good location page should have. It's really well put together. But this is the national franchise, what I would call a national franchise model. And then the GBP listing links to that location page. And then on the on their site, if we just go to their locations, so they have a location page that it's a little weird to get to because their dynamic logic they're using to basically serve up localized results to a site visitor. But they have state pages for each one of their states. All right, so they have a location page that links to a page of all their states, and then a state page that then links to all their location pages. This is a really great example of how to structure a franchise website or a multi-location website that's going to serve a vast area. So a couple things with this: it allows you to link build pretty efficiently across all these pages, right? So if I would link build to the California page, I'm in fact link building to every single one of these location pages. So typically what we do, we have a link building strategy that we would use for multi-location, where individual location pages, they get the citation profile, they get basically all the signals we build for the GBP listing, the social accounts, the brand, the individual citations for each one of these pages. And then depending on competitiveness, we would maybe do some hyper local link building, maybe some local sponsorship links or patch posts or things like that to push results faster. But real link building the site, to build authority to the site, we would build, guest posts to these type of pages, to the location pages, to the state pages, to the USA page. And it makes it effective to push organic results as well. So the next model we're going to look at is what I call the local franchise model. ServPro does it really well. So they do have corporate website, they have location pages on that, but most of their franchise locations have their own locally optimized website with a locally optimized URL, and that's what they use to link to their GBP listings. So individual websites that are, and we'll look at a couple examples here. So here's one where this is the location page on the corporate website for Westchester, but Westchester ServPro actually has this URL. It's ServPro Westchester, PA. This is their actual website. So these, and what it allows them to do is the URL, this site's highly optimized now for Westchester, PA. It allows you to become a little bit more locally relevant, right? So this site, and you can't see the URL structure right now because of how my screen is, but this site is ServPro Westchester, PA. So every page on this site's relevant for Westchester, PA. Every service page, every blog post, because it's in the URL. So they're going to create more relevancy for location that way. And it might give them a little bit of benefit, right? The trade-off is that we saw it's going to be less efficient to rank, right? The national franchise model, like Roto-Rooter, like you can literally organically, you can rank in all, so many cities effectively and efficiently, versus this, you literally have an individual website. You have to link build to this one website. Every website then doesn't act to the benefit of other ones. So you lose that efficiency of scale, right? So there's a trade-off. More locally relevant, so you probably might rank a little bit better on some of those searches, but organically probably not. So there's a trade-off. So, and then just to clarify, the GBP listing is attached to the locally optimized domain. So the GBP listing links to the ServPro Westchester, PA. We can look at that. So it's definitely a viable strategy if you have the budget. This works good for independently owned franchises, right? So ServPro are mostly independently owned. They have their little service areas. So this makes sense. You lose a little bit of control over maybe, brand messaging, because the site owners or the franchise owners usually market their own sites. So the Westchester, whoever owns the Westchester franchise is probably responsible for marketing these assets, not corporate. So corporate loses some brand control. But if we look at where it links to, you can see the site it links to here. And they tend to rank really well. And then what we are the third model is going to be the subdomain model. And a really popular multi-location company that uses that is Paul Davis Restoration. Paul Davis Restoration, the individual locations used locally optimized subdomains on the corporate website. So it's actually going to be a subdomain of this main website, and that's what they link their GBP listings to. So we'll look at some examples here. So here's Baltimore. It's baltimore.pauldavis.com. Right? This is their location page. And again, you can't see the URL, but it's baltimore.pauldavis.com. And then the GBP listing, you can see that's where they're linking to, right? baltimore.pauldavis.com. That's their location page. So the trade-off on this, the trade-off on using this model is, I guess there's a theory that maybe that main URL imparts some type of domain authority to the subdomains. But in actuality, you're going to probably have to rank each one of those subdomains just like a locally optimized site, but you're not quite getting the benefit of all those supporting pages like the ServPro site. So in my opinion, if you're going to do one, if you're going to choose one not to do, I would probably not use the Paul Davis model. I would not use the subdomain model. I don't think it's as effective as the other two. The trade-offs, it has lots of negatives, but not many benefits to it. There's really no benefit of using that locally optimized subdomain versus just using a locally optimized URL. That's going to rank a lot better. Every page on that site is going to be a lot more relevant then, right? So if you look at this Paul Davis for Baltimore, right, they aren't all Baltimore, right? They're the same content on whether it's Baltimore, Central PA, Los Angeles. This is all the same basically, right? So they're not really getting any benefit of having like their own site with this locally relevant content because it's not. It really isn't. Where ServPro sites, they really are locally relevant. So, and then you would still have to do their own link building and everything else. And then if you link build to the main site, pauldavis.com, that does not come back down to Baltimore unless you're literally linking contextually to it. And in that case, why would you not just put a regular URL structure together and regular folders like the national model, like Roto-Rooter, who ranks tremendously well across all their markets. And you can compare who ranks better, and I'll let you do that analysis yourself. But in my opinion, this would not be the model I use. I would either use the national model or the locally optimized website model. And that really is my analysis of the three main, structures of a multi-location business. Typically, the ServPro locally optimized website model makes sense in some cases. The national model is what I tend to prefer and what I tend to work with my clients, is we build out that national model using something very similar to Roto-Rooter, and they rank really, really well. When they're done correctly, they rank really, really well, and they are efficient to do. You're not wasting a lot of link building resources and content resources for all these locations when you can kind of do some of this on the main site. And you can do all these main plumbing pages, they can internally link to your location pages, and you could get benefit from that. Whereas the Paul Davis model, it's like, well, why would you, like, I'm not sure why you would link out of that domain. It just didn't make sense to me, but that's my analysis. Let me know if you have any questions about this. But this does conclude our multi-location Google Maps Bootcamp by Local Brand Manager. Hopefully, there was at least one or two things that you were able to take away from our presentation today. If you have any questions, we do have live chat that you can submit questions to. We also have support email you can submit questions to. But our multi-location strategy is effective across multiple clients, U.S. and international as well. We're interested in hearing your